Hi, everybody. This is Nick Giallourakis, and I want to personally thank you for watching our very first episode of Spilling Tea with the G's. This is episode 1, and who the G's are, myself, Nick Giallourakis, and Steve Giallourakis on her as well, two of the co-founders of the Elephants and Tea media and publication. For those that don't know the name Elephants and Tea, what that means, cancer is the elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about, and tea is the relief that the conversation can provide. So that's what we're doing today in our first episode of this weekly video cast that we're launching is having conversations with people in the AYA cancer community. For those that aren't familiar with what AYA stands for, it's adolescent and young adults. That's 15 to 39 in the States. Some other countries, I know it's a little bit different, but that's okay. You get the gist of it. So again, we wanted to invite different people onto our video cast, talk with them, get to know them a little bit better on the cool things that they're doing for the cancer community. And we'll give them an opportunity in a second. Before we get into our first guest, I just thought it'd be good just to kind of tee things up. A lot of you have known my face from different videos that we've been putting out there, but I wanted to give my brother Steve an opportunity to introduce himself and talk about all the crazy stuff that he's been dealing with in his life. So Steve, I'll just pass it over to you and you can try to sum it up. I don't know how quickly you want to sum it up, but I'll just let you go ahead and talk about a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Nick. My name is Steve Giallourakis. I'm kind of the inspiration, I guess, behind Elephants and Tea. So I'm 29 years old right now. When I was 15 years old, I was diagnosed with my first cancer, osteosarcoma. When I was 18, I was diagnosed with my second cancer, AML. And then just last September, I was diagnosed with my third and my fourth cancer. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm just really excited to be here now to get a chance to talk with members of our community and see all the good things they're doing and, just get a chance to, make a difference here. So that's who I am.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. So, and again, gang, this is going to be pretty laid back, so don't judge us on our skills here. We're just looking to have a fun time and have conversations with friends. So I think it's a perfect segue over to our very first guest, Hernan Barangan. And Hernan, did I butcher the last name, man? Was that close enough?
No, that was great. Thank you, Nick. Yeah. Let's all just say my name 5 times. It's like saying Beetlejuice.
Barangan.
I'm behind you.
Well, we're gonna do it together.
Well, I'm really glad. I mean, I've always loved what you guys do, and number one from the name, because usually I'm the elephant. I'm the bull in the china shop, and I'm also addicted to tea. So those 2 things are my favorite things. And
Awesome.
So are you guys, the guy.
Awesome. Thank you, Hernan. I appreciate that, bud. And you've been doing some amazing work. I mean, over the past couple of years that we've known you with the stuff with Cancer Rebellion, which we'll get to in a little bit here.
Thank you.
But I think it would be really cool for the audience just to kind of hear a little bit about yourself, right? On why you're involved with the AYA community, right? Steve and I know that, but those are the folks that are listening to this and watching this today. I think it'd be great if you can just kind of tell us a little bit more about your journey, what you've been dealing with cancer in your life, because I know it's quite the story.
Here, let me throw my notifications off. Here we go. Done. Yeah. Well, I've always been in the AYA community, and I guess I didn't always know that, though. And that's really why I work in it so much now, is that I could have known. I didn't know that there was a community at all. See, so like I was 15 when I was first diagnosed, and at that age, I remember. Well, I was in a pediatric world, right? And so I kind of thought that the only other people that got cancer were kids and me.
Right.
And so I didn't know that there was a community out there to talk to at all, right? Being a rebellious teenager, I also didn't want to know. I mean, like I felt like anything to do with cancer was like, no, thank you. I've had enough.
Right.
Anything that had to do with the medical center, stuff like, and honestly, once I graduated from Cancer High School and like they told me that I was like I remember being about a year and a half out from being in the thick of it and being in treatment, where I'm like, okay, well, I'm not coming back here. Screw this place. So I didn't go back to my doctor for a good decade.
Yeah, sure.
By the way, guys, not the thing to do. It's
No.
very bad.
Steve's nodding his head, I think, with you there. Steve, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, chime in, Steve. Pretty bad, right?
I'm just sitting back here, just like nodding my head, like nervously, like, oh gosh, Hernan.
Hey, I was dumb, but you know, I did what I had to do to get kind of away from the whole cancer thing and put distance so that I could kind of grow. But what I realized after some time was that I wasn't growing. You know, I wasn't allowing myself to move on. And that kind of came as a rude awakening because a friend of mine, his younger brother, got diagnosed with AML, the same like diagnosis that I had, and all of it just kind of came crashing in on me. Like, what, you know? And he was in our age group, this guy. It seriously just blew my mind. You know, I really wanted to talk to him, number one, just about what he was going through. Half for him and half for me, right? But he was also in that state where, like, you know, I don't really want to talk about it. I'm going through it right now, and like we're all entitled to that too. And so I thought, okay, we're going to talk about this someday. We're going to be really good friends and everything. But I didn't get that chance, right?
Right.
As is way too often the case. And I felt like, and I just was filled with this regret that I, you know, not just for not having been able to connect with him, but for the decade that I lost not thinking about this.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And so I started to, and that was like the beginning of my, you know, my foray into what AYA community meant, right? And so I started looking for it, and yeah, I found it just, you know, through the local medical center and through going on a first descent and all that, you know, over the coming years after that. And it all started to deepen towards this greater project that I had in the back of my head, which was Cancer Rebellion.
Right. Right. So, you know, I think I'm going to jump in now with a question for you, and kind of let's talk about Cancer Rebellion first, right? And I think that that's important because you just kind of laid out your journey and kind of where it's led you, right? I mean, that's what your experiences are, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. I know I can, I know Steve can, as far as what you've been through. But, you know, for Cancer Rebellion, we talked a little bit before we started hitting record on this today, that it's such an awesome thing what you did with Cancer Rebellion. The film is just unbelievable, and those that are in the AYA community really can resonate with it. But not enough people know about it. So let's just go there real quick, Hernan. Tell us a little bit, tell the audience a little bit about Cancer Rebellion. You know, I believe it did launch last year, was the official launch, correct?
Yeah, it was the official release, I would say.
Right, the release. There you go. That's the better way.
I guess I think of the launch as the day that I hit the road.
There you go. There you go. You are the director, video producer guy, right? Film producer and director. So I'll let you, you know, you have better terminology than I do, but go ahead. Let's talk about it, right? Tell everybody about Cancer Rebellion a little bit. I think you kind of already said what influenced it, but let's talk about it. Go ahead and just kind of.
Cancer Rebellion was, you know, I kind of back to bring us back to when I was in the hospital as a teenager. I didn't know, you know, obviously it's the time of your life where you're trying to figure out what you're going to do with your life too. All my friends are going off to college and stuff, and I'm sitting watching movies all day. Well, I fell in love with movies. You know, that became all I wanted to do. And so I went off after all that to film school, thinking somehow I was going to work this into my whole cancer experience. I didn't know how.
Right.
And in that, like I said, in that 10 years that, you know, that I was running away from cancer, I went off and I learned everything I could about what it took to make movies. through film school and then through kind of the Hard Knocks school of music videos and all that other junk that I produced in the late 90s.
When you had hair, right?
Yeah. Oh God, no, I didn't have. This never came back after cancer, by the way.
Really?
Wow.
I did have a green tail. That's the most that I could grow. I colored it green, thinking I could, pass as somewhat normal.
You might have to share a video to us on that so we can embarrass you, or maybe don't. Maybe you're proud of it.
There's footage. Yeah, there's footage. I'll show you. But yeah. So I wanted to. The more people I started meeting in the AYA community, the more I realized the big problem was that we weren't sharing our stories enough. We weren't hearing our stories enough too. And the way our stories were being told in the media, in movies and stuff, was being controlled by people that didn't know a damn thing about it. You'd see a movie and some cancer patient would be in it, and he'd be a plot device. He wouldn't even be a character.
Right.
This has been changing in the past few years, which is good. But I felt like if I could change the narrative, if I could make cancer this thing that's like freaky and people equate it with death and all this stuff, if I could take that and spin it into something positive and empowering and because it's not all shit, this experience.
Right.
If I could make it a whole human thing, then I'd be doing a service not just to the other patients that are going through it, but I'd be changing the way we as a society approach it. And the more that regular people can come at cancer without the fear and the baggage and all that, the heaviness that cancer is, they can better support people that are going through it currently, because there isn't like a prejudice, running into it. And so I started, and boy, I just went off on a tangent, didn't I? Not much of a tangent, but
No, you're
a philosophical rant.
well, no, and it was it's actually something good that you brought up, because it's one of the things that we know is that every person's cancer experience is so different.
Yeah.
And we have so many, I know we both have so many friends that get well, you look okay, you look fine.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the good things that Cancer Rebellion did, is it showed those, differing views of how there were differing perspectives on how each cancer patient, goes through that journey. And actually, obviously, when you started off on the Cancer Rebellion road, you had some knowledge of what you thought it was going to be. But I can imagine as you traveled through all 50 states and everything and got all those stories, that you learned a lot and you experienced some things you didn't plan on. And I guess it'd be kind of interesting to hear, about that, what really surprised you.
Absolutely. And yeah, I did want to go onto the road with an open heart for like anything that might, any story that I find. I knew from what I knew about what my own cancer experience was like, and the few people that I'd, been interviewing around LA. I knew that there were commonalities. I knew that we all go through a certain kind of rigmarole during treatment and post-treatment and all that other stuff. But the real beauty of it is how individual it is, right? And how we each kind of we figure out our own little song by doing it, by going through that. And so, yeah, I went out and I would collect as many interviews. That was my goal, collect as many interviews as I could. And when I say interview, this isn't like a 15-minute run and gun, boom, give me your elevator pitch. I would spend a whole day, sometimes 2 days with somebody. The first interview will go 2 hours, and then maybe we'll have another one, and then another one, just this. And it's all up to, it would become all up to you. Like you whatever you want to say is yours, I'm here to hear it. Knowing that was my method of collecting these stories, meant that I was going to come out with a lot of material, and everybody, and there was going to be a great variety of it too. So by the time that I'd done all 50 states, and I remember working out the mileage, like I could have gone around the earth twice.
Wow.
For all the zigzagging that I did in America.
Oh gosh.
Once I got through that entire journey and came back, I was at a loss for how I was going to assemble this thing. I knew, again, I knew, just having lived through the whole journey and lived through my own journey, like, okay, there's a shape in there, but where? Where? And I just had to keep chiseling away at it to make them, to end up with the hour and 40-minute movie that we have out right now.
Right. I have so many questions for Hernan, and Steve and I have seen the film, and I know we both got emotional watching it because it just resonated so many memories of what Steve had gone through and our family had gone through. So I kind of have like a two-part question for you here. One, was there one situation that kind of stood out over the others that you just will never forget in this experience? I'll ask that question first and I'll ask my follow-up next. But I guess, so again, what is there one situation that you went through or just one experience throughout this trip that really sticks in your mind?
Wow.
Putting you on the spot with that one, I realize. I totally threw a curveball at you.
That's deep. Well, they're also, just to speak on the macro for a second, like,
sure.
Imagine this, like you arrive in a city, you meet an amazing person, you get to know a lot about them, you spend all this time with them, you meet their family, the people that are important to them, and you come away at the end of that with like, wow, I have a really good friend in Oklahoma. And then you hit hearing the stories that we go through, like you kind of feel like you lived through it too, the depth of it, the joy of it and all that. If I had to then go and do the same thing the very next day, I'm not sure I could have. But I would get in the car and I would drive for 8 hours the next day. And all that would just be spinning in my head, and I'd get to process it. And then I'd arrive in the new city and I'd meet new people. And it was just the most energizing thing in the world to feel like everywhere I went, I had friends, and everywhere I went, people were waiting for me. And in between, I could unpackage it and and so that I could really savor it, before moving on to the next one.
Right.
So overall, it was a dream project. It was like something, obviously it's like the project of my life, because it's been something I've been wanting to get to, something I wish I could get old enough for, you know what I mean? If you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And so that was kind of the best part of it. But on the micro, like thinking of like, well, what was the one experience that sticks in my head after all that? Like, it was almost a year and a quarter that we were on the road. Obviously getting stuck in the hospital sucked in Pennsylvania, but that was
at Penn State, right?
Yeah, it was at Penn State. But and kind of the magic of that was that, like, in the middle of all this thinking about cancer, I had like a cancer scare. Sure. And so and being put in a hospital bed in a hospital room for 4 days was like, brought it all right back to me, as it does for all of us, right? But early on, we met a really great person in Vegas, one of our first stops going east, and did the interview. She was like, her main problem was that she felt super alone and her friends kind of abandoned her, which as happens to so many of us. And while we're on the road, like, you know, a week later, we found out that she passed, and that also, I think I remember being like just so galvanizing to me, over the experience of the trip, that, like, you know, there's an urgency to us collecting our stories.
Sure. How many people, just to give the folks an idea, to tease them, and then I think we'll let them go dive into Cancer Rebellion on their own, and we'll tell them where they can check it out. How many total interviews did you end up doing?
Total, there's 100.
Okay.
Interviews, and you know, I was only going initially to get one interview per state, but as I said, I wanted to get as many as possible. And many states I would book two interviews for, because we need a backup in case somebody wanted to drop out last minute, as happens sometimes. Mm-hmm. And then, like, some places, like I remember in Philadelphia, we interviewed about like 5 people in one day because they just happened to be there. And we went to a park and just hung out, and everybody told their stories. So yeah, you know, that I caught up on the numbers there, but yeah, about 100 people. And part of my goal was not just to make Cancer Rebellion the film, the feature film, but to make a short narrative for each person I interviewed too, right? And so there is like a short film for each person, like, and you know, the main thing they wanted to talk about and the main things that they loved go into that one, like, 3 to 5 minute video, which if you play those end to end, it's longer than the movie. It's like 2.5 hours.
Wow. Sure. I'm sure. That's really cool. And I know,
yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, and, you know, and one of these days, I would like to see the one after you snagged me and grabbed me into an exam room and interviewed me for like 2 hours. So wouldn't mind seeing that today.
Yeah, that got worse. I remember before we were even done with the road trip, we wanted to do a quick video for Chuck and Char Fowler out there. And so I worked that in there. You probably remember that one. Yeah. But yeah, no, guys, I fell in love with Cleveland. Woo!
Oh yeah,
great place.
It's a good time. You have to come back sometime soon.
I'm down.
I mean, I guess once we're allowed to travel again, right? I mean, my gosh.
Oh, no kidding.
What's going on right now, right? You know, and before we move on to another topic, Hernan, where can people check out Cancer Rebellion?
It is at a few places now. So after the whole festival run last year, I signed it with a distributor that I met at Napa Film Festival, and they put it out on Amazon. So it's on Amazon. You can like, I think you can rent it, buy it, or get a DVD. It's on iTunes, it's on Google Video, it's on YouTube, but you know, I think they're all as rentals right now. And I think that company is trying to figure out, well, what's another streaming distributor for it and all that.
Cool.
They pitched it for Netflix, and Netflix was like, no. And I'm like, you bastards. But we'll see. I'm still hopeful that we can find a pretty good streaming home for it, because I feel like I built it to be seen offhand. I built it, and like, if you see it, the first 5 minutes, they fly like this, because I want somebody to click it on and just get sucked in, and then, like, before you know it, it's an hour in, and you're stuck. You have to watch it.
Yeah.
You know, Hernan, I could see it ending up on a lot of streaming channels in the next months or year, because I think only Netflix is the only one that has streaming until beginning of 2021, like actual things filmed.
Oh, really?
Everyone's run out of content. So
yeah. Hopefully, we'll see. I mean, that's the trick. Like, I want people to be able to find it and just find it easy.
Yeah.
Right.
Because for people that don't know anything about cancer, clicking on something that says cancer or rebellion, even I tried to like make it sound with the rebellion. That's still a reach for people that don't know anything about it. And hopefully the more people that see the film, the more people that realize, oh, you know, this subject doesn't have to be the gloomy thing that we think it is.
That's a great point. I'm gonna write that one down. We're gonna have to use that to help promote it out again. So that's fantastic.
Fun, take it.
Why not? That's what we're here for, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for taking us down the Cancer Rebellion tour, because it was awesome. So folks, if you haven't seen it yet, definitely check out Cancer Rebellion. I highly recommend it. For those that have been through cancer, as Hernan and Steve both have alluded to, it's all the crappy memories that come back, and all the different feelings, right? I think that you get from being in the hospital or through treatments, they come back, but at the same time, it kind of unites everybody. As I know, Hernan, you like to use the phrase, the tribe, right? That we are in the AYA cancer community. So with that said, let's kind of pivot to what's going on right now. And, we like to always bring up what's the elephant in the room for everybody, right, Steve? And I know that that's kind of something there when COVID's going on. So Steve, I'll throw it over to you.
As many of our viewers who are cancer patients probably are experiencing, this is a pretty stressful time for everybody in the world, but especially for our community. And, everyone's trying to do different things to, get through this extremely stressful time. And I guess for you, Hernan, how was all of this affecting you personally? How are you dealing with this?
I was, first couple of weeks that this was going on, I was a ball of nerves. I obviously didn't leave the house. I still haven't left the house, but I feel a lot better about it now. I was getting a lot of like old PTSD kind of come back up, and feel like the whole like health threat, number one, how am I gonna live? How am I gonna, what if I get sick? All that stuff was crashing down on me. And being somebody like post-cancer, you run into a million reasons to end up having to run to the medical center. Whereas right now, I don't want to be anywhere near the medical center. And so I'm like, just making sure that like, okay, I'm good. I'm like, nothing, there's no reason to be, to visit the doctor or anything. And being so I'm in a wheelchair. I'm like, I know for people who haven't seen the movie, you don't see that. I'm in a standing wheelchair right now, actually, which is kind of
interesting.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Oh, see you later.
Anyway.
That's cool.
So the addition of that risk, the wheel, I don't go outside because, number one, I know that my lungs wouldn't be able to take the whole COVID thing. The wheels touch the ground, people sneeze. It's all the ground catches everything. The wheels touch my hands. And so it would just get all over everything. It's not even worth thinking about.
I never would have even thought about that until you just mentioned it, but it's so true.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. You have to think about these things, especially like, and obviously I do because I'm crazy.
Well, and you should, right? I mean, well, we're all crazy. You might be a little bit more than at least I am. No, but being someone that's in a wheelchair, obviously for those that aren't, it's just something that we never experience, right? And never have to think about, but it's so true that the sneezing and everything else that falls on the ground ends up on your wheels, right? I mean, my gosh.
Yeah. And I just have to be extra vigilant about that. And so now, and it was funny. Like I found that after the first couple weeks of the initial freak out, I started to have a system in place where, I knew, okay, the Clorox wipes are here. What little Purell I had on hand is here. Stuff like that, and just having the system of it in place made me more at ease. And that was an exact mirror of what it was like when I was first diagnosed, and the chaos of not knowing how to deal with stuff, and the chaos of not knowing what your systems are in place. As soon as you have that system, you know, everything just kind of goes, all right, I can do this. And that's where I'm at right now. We can do this. We can do this.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Gosh. Cool. Well, I'm glad you're getting better at it, right? Kind of thinking more and more, maybe light at the end of the tunnel type thing. I know we got a long way to go still with the vaccines and stuff. But, you know, on the topic of COVID, you know, I've had this conversation many times, and, you know, why don't you talk about what you're trying to work on right now? I think that it's extremely important in documenting what's happening in our community right now.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah. So in the midst of all this, you know, obviously being somebody that I love getting our voices together. I love playing with our stories so that our stories sing a bigger story, right? And so I want to put out a call to everybody that is willing to tell their story on video for me, and in this horizontal format, please, by the way. You know, the things that we're feeling as cancer survivors, patients, the things that we're going through, the things we're having to adjust to, all this stuff is really important. It's funny, they may feel like just the little bits of our day-to-day, but if we don't document them, we're going to forget them. If we don't document them, other people aren't going to hear them. The tips that we come up with, the ways that we thrive, right? All that needs to be documented. And so I'm really hoping that as many of you as hear this can record a little bit about your days, record the things that you love about this, the things that you hate about it, the fears, just put it all on video, because that is what is going to preserve it for, you know, for other people to see, and send it to me so that then I can put it all together into one beautiful piece, and I can show it back to you, and you can show it to yourself, and then show it to other people, because again, that story that we're all a part of, it needs to be put out there, it needs to be written, it needs to be read, right?
Right. Couldn't agree more. And just, I know just from the short time we've all been in social isolation, the stories we've been getting in written format have just been unbelievable. But I think, as we all know, that words are awesome, but video, you know, it's just so cool to actually see the emotions on someone's face versus trying to read it sometimes and get the tone. You can get tone, I think, sometimes on someone's stories and stuff, but it's just not the same to see the emotions on someone's face on what they're going through. I think that it's so cool that, you know, you're working on exactly what you've always been working on, is helping someone tell their story, which is so in line with what Elephants and Tea is all about too, just in the written format. Obviously, here we are with a video cast trying to do the same thing, but we, you know, it's just so cool that you're doing that, and thank you for that.
No, thank you. And I think that thank you for what you guys do with that too, because I feel like writing is a very important part of telling that story and everything. It's a different method too. Like, I think that some people love to write, some people are good at writing, and some people are good at reading, and some people are not, and some people want to just watch stuff, and some people want to sing stuff, and some people want to, like, you know, act it out. Like, so I feel like there's place for everybody to do what they love and what they're good at, and as long as we can all, you know, get it out there,
right, and get it out there. And then also too, I think, to something you said earlier, get it out there, but get the actual correct story out there too, right? And I think that we're both all about that. I know when we launched Elephants and Tea, that was exactly what we heard from people. We were looking at doing it as like a magazine with editorial interviews and things like that. Everybody we talked to, from a patient, survivor, oncologist, we were at focus groups, and we were shot down with that idea. People flat out said, let us tell our own stories so it doesn't get sugar-coated. Like, let us actually share our experiences. So when you were talking about that with Cancer Rebellion, I was just going, yes, like that's what people want to hear. And I think the terminology a lot of folks like to use is we don't want to hear from another cancer muggle on how to tell us what to do and what to get,
Totally.
right? You know, so, and, you know, I'm obviously not a patient or survivor. I know Steve is just dying laughing in the background right now at that phrase. I even said that, but it's true, you know, that people want to preach on certain things, but, you know, we need to get the actual story out there. Let people tell their story, whether it's video, whether it's written format, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's what I've kind of been doing my whole life, is like, I'm dedicated to like what almost like getting out of the way and letting you drive the story. Let you know, that's the most important thing. Just like, you know what, you want to write this essay, let's get it out there. You know, you want that, you need to spread this emotion. Let's get that emotion out there, you know?
Yeah.
And there's so many ways that it can be done now.
So many ways. That's spot on, my friend. Very well said. So I guess just to kind of, you know, wrap things up, I feel like, gosh, for now we can keep going all day, right?
Keep going.
But I guess one of the final questions I'll have for you, you know, is there anything else you're working on? I know the COVID stuff, trying to document some things right now, but is there any other big projects you got going on? Because we're always curious on what you're working on.
Oh, I always have as many things as I can up my sleeve. Well, last year, I mean, this is kind of it's done already, and I'm just hoping that they can find some sort of distribution method for it, though. I made my first virtual reality piece.
Okay.
Yeah, did I tell you about this yet?
You did. You mentioned it to me a little bit when you were in Cleveland, I think. It was like the tip of the iceberg is where you were with it.
Yeah, well, it's done and it's been around. It actually won an award at last year's Tribeca, and it was nominated for an Emmy last year too, like an interactive Emmy.
Hey, it's still an Emmy, right?
Kind of counts. But yeah, it's about it's a true story of a ballerina in New York who was diagnosed with breast cancer and had to find a way to bring dance back into her life, you know, to bring meaning back and thusly move on. And so I feel like it's the same ethos of Cancer Rebellion, only told, and like, this will blow your mind, in an interactive, fully immersive, like almost a video game of what it's like to go through treatment, essentially. All told while, you know, from the eyes of this ballerina. It's a true story. Her name is Maggie, and she goes by the term bald ballerina out in New York. And yeah, I'm really proud of that piece. I think that it, you know, once people can get it in their headsets, it's going to be pretty cool to see, because I feel like if it, you know, virtual reality has been called now I can't remember. It's been called the empathy machine, because it puts you in the seat next to the person that's telling the story rather than in the seat watching the person tell the story, right? And so I'm pretty excited to see how that works, and hopefully people get to see that. I'm also working on, well, obviously this COVID Cancer Rebellion type project. I've got a script out. Like I've been doing this for coming on 20 years now. And most of the time I was working on trying to break into Hollywood the other way. So I have a script about a fish heist that's out, that we're trying to get made. Right now I'm writing a 1920s era gangster film.
Oh my gosh.
That actually kicks ass. I'm pretty excited about it, but I don't want to blow the trumpet on that yet.
So I'm going to circle back on the virtual reality stuff, because I can't let you walk away without asking you some questions on this. I'm sure Steve might as well. So the empathy machine, that was actually going to be my question as soon as you brought it up. For someone like myself who hasn't been through treatments, or someone like Steve who has been through treatments, is it kind of set up to where when I'm sitting through it, you actually, I think you kind of alluded to it, but I'm so intrigued. I'm trying to understand which question I want to ask, but for someone that has never been through treatments, they'll be able to kind of have an understanding of the look and feel of what their day-to-day stuff was for this ballerina specifically, right?
Yes, and it's not as boring as you think. You know, obviously, like what it's like to sit in the hospital getting chemo all day. That sounds horrible. That's just boring. Boring is the worst part of it. The second worst is the pain, I should say, I guess, or throwing up and all that other junk. So the story, in the story, you're kind of learning how to dance along with this ballerina as she grows up, right? So you, with your controllers, doing moves, that type of thing. And so much of it is, since VR is kind of a physical thing too, like it encourages you to move around in that space and copy the dance moves. And so there's a real physical element to the first half of the piece. And I kind of think of it, I wanted to approach the subject of cancer within this as kind of a surprise in the middle of the film, right? Kind of like we were going after my favorite episode of Chef's Table on Netflix. We can talk about that later. But the cancer thing comes in as a surprise. And in the virtual reality piece, it's a complete and utter interruption to that physicality, right?
Just like any other cancer patient, right?
Exactly. You are not able to interact anymore. Your interactivity gets stolen. Your ability to move and have that affect the world in that virtual space gets taken away. And all that you then see is, so you know how a dance rehearsal place is all mirrors? All those mirrors shatter. And in as these shattered pieces of glass are circling you, they reflect back images of treatment, for this ballerina, and like many of them are from her real experience. Some and it's there's an IV pole, all that other stuff, and so for the uninitiated, it should feel like a giant shock to the story.
Wow. I'm so just intrigued by this now. And this is not available right now, you said, or it is available?
It's been playing at film festivals. I think it's nearing the end of its film festival run, and they have to figure out a distribution strategy. I think most of that is going to be via Steam, like how most people get virtual reality now. Virtual reality is still kind of a growing thing. So like how many households have it? Is much less than have a TV, but hopefully, sometime soon I'll have news as to where you can go on Steam to download it and experience it. And it's like a 20-minute experience, but you can stay in there as long as you want because you can do the dances as long as you want. That's the goal, right? But anyway, so that in terms of that. The interruption of treatment, the story has to get out of that, right? And so like these mirror shards, the whole concept was that they would go and the bits of it would form a massive theater, right? And we actually went and recorded a theater in Ontario. With LiDAR. And so it's an actual theater in there, and these mirror bits go off and form this theater, on the stage of which becomes like the ballet finale, where she's reconnected with dance, reconnected with what she loves in life, and uses that to go on and and thrive.
This is so cool. And so see, like virtual reality stuff just blows my mind because I'm such a novice when it comes to it. But so you mentioned it was at film festivals and stuff. So are like different like stations, like almost like pods with people that put on like the virtual reality equipment and stuff, right?
Exactly. If you go to a film festival that does have a VR segment, there will be a room of people doing VR together. And that's what that looks like, exactly, because it is a one at a time per headset kind of experience.
That's so cool. Well, and just the intricacies, like you were saying, with the pieces of glass flying by and different, that just blows my mind, that the work that had to go into it is just so cool.
Yeah, by far the most money per minute I've ever spent on a project. At least it wasn't my money.
We won't ask that question. How much?
Yeah, but yeah, a lot of animation, a lot of stuff had to go into it. I mean, like we were very fortunate to be able to use some very cutting edge Microsoft technology to film this, right? So it's like, a lot of virtual reality you would think of as a 360 experience where the camera was in the middle of the room and it just collected a 360 video plate. This project was shot the other way. We had a green screen room and like a dancer in the middle of that green screen room with 106 cameras pointed in at that person. And the computer would take all the information from all these cameras and recreate that person in the computer, right? So like a live model of a human in the computer that you can walk around, right? And so our virtual experience is populated by real people in this space, and each one was filmed individually and put together, and you can walk around them and interact. It's totally it's the next step in immersion in virtual reality.
But you actually have to do a motion capture, Hernan?
It's like motion capture, but without replacing it with a gorilla. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like actually a photographic model of a person that we were able to use, right, and place within like kind of a bigger space, like a theater, or and it allowed us to be a lot more lyrical with that too. So in terms of like there's a scene where that dancer is in a recital studio with a bunch of other dancers doing different stretches and stuff like that. The end of that scene kind of goes off, and the whole room just kind of dissolves into into this corridor with all the dancers walking away from you and stuff. Like it's beyond what could have been done in a standard short film, or what I mean. It definitely was more in the realm of Hollywood graphics, but in a virtual scale. And yeah, and then using these tools to be able to tell, it's essentially a cancer story.
Right.
These are not the things that get funded very often.
No.
We were really, really fortunate for that. And it was supposed to be a series. Like my plan was that this would be one of 10 at least. But we're still looking for funding for the rest of them, because it's a process.
Sure. So overall, how long did it take to film it and put it all together, start to finish?
Well, the planning was a long time. It took us, and so this was kind of like a dream project of mine too. In the end, that like it took us about a year to find backing for it, 6 months of pre-production to plan it out, and then 3 wild days of shooting it, and then nearly a year of creating it. Like, because like once you shoot it, it's just the characters. Like all the environment has to be put in, the sequence has to be put in, the audio. We had a legit composer create a music for this piece. Like he's the guy that like wrote music for Star Trek and a bunch of other stuff. And he's a great guy. And like, oh my God, all the tools were being thrown at this project. So I'm like pretty proud of it.
That's so cool. And what's it called again?
It's called The 100%. So we named it, that's supposed to be the name of the series, The 100%, right? We came up with that title because 100% is what it's that thing, it's that feeling you hit after treatment or after a hospital stay where somebody will ask you, hey, how are you feeling? I'm not quite there yet. I'm not quite there. There's a day where you start to say, you know what? I'm at 100%. And that's where the feeling I wanted to, and like, sure, that 100% may not mean the same thing that it meant before this whole experience, but you know what? It's 100% right now. And so that's what the series was supposed to be about. Hopefully we still get to make the other episodes, but.
Very cool. I love it. Very cool. So I have to keep an eye on it now. I don't have any virtual reality equipment, but Steve, I don't know if you do or not, but I'll have to figure out.
And until then, go see Cancer Rebellion if you haven't.
Yes, I was just going to say Cancer Rebellion. Check it out. Hernan, any parting thoughts for the audience at Elephants and Tea? Like we like to call it the herd.
Yeah. All right, guys, stick together. We can get through this whole thing. I mean, if we can get through cancer, we can get through, hell, we can get through it. If we can get through one day, we can get through tomorrow. That's the key. And so, number one, let's do that. Number two, let's tell those stories.
Yes. And
number three, let's get those stories out.
Awesome, man. I think you hit it on the head as far as stories. We're in this together, and I will say that's something we've heard from a lot of people. It's like social isolation. I'll teach you what social isolation is.
Yeah.
So I think we had the specific title from someone was social isolation from a master. That's one of our posts on our website right now from an individual who's been through cancer treatments, I think 3 or 4 different times. So
and again, we do have our experience is so valid in this position. Like, I think I saw a meme yesterday that was like, somebody like afraid to go outside. I don't exactly remember what the meme was, but I'm like, I've felt that from my whole life, people. We have a very specific set of tools that we've built, and that stuff is valuable for us, not just to share amongst ourselves, but to share with the people that don't know and are just coming across this health scare for the first time. So we have a very valid voice, and we've got to share it.
Definitely. All right, Hernan. Well, thanks again, man, for being our first episode for Spilling Tea with the G's on Elephants.
Thank you.
Been fantastic. Steve, any parting thoughts from you today?
Just thank you so much, Hernan. It's been a pleasure, as it always is, to talk with you. And to everybody out there, be safe and take care of yourselves.
All righty. And again, go check out Cancer Rebellion if you haven't already. It's awesome. Check it out. If you have any questions about that, let me know. And any questions on what Hernan's working on with COVID-19, documenting those videos, reach out to us as well. Nick@elephantsandtea.com or info@elephantsandtea.com, or hit us up on social media. So again, folks, thank you so much. Tune in next week for our second episode of Spilling Tea with the G's. Have a great day, everybody. And thanks again, Hernan.
Thanks.